Welcome to Theory of Pets. I'm a passionate pet owner with a drive to help others like me uncover the truth about the pet industry and what goes on behind the scenes.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Theory of Pets podcast. I'm Connor Knight. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about summertime risks with dogs. Today, I have Dr. Lyndsey Kingsley. She works with BetterVet. She was born and raised in Houston, Texas. She obtained her bachelor's degree in biomedical science with an honors at Texas A&M University before graduating from veterinary school in 2014, and with a special focus on exotic animals and radiology. After graduation, she moved to Austin, where she worked in a busy brick and mortar practice before starting her mobile venture in 2016. And never looking back, in her free time, Dr. Kingsley also enjoys competitive mountain biking, rock climbing, and spending time with her three dogs, Remy, Scout, and Finn. So thank you for coming on today, Dr. Kingsley. We really appreciate it. I'm excited for this conversation, and hopefully we can bring some value to our listeners as far as that summertime heat all across the country and how to deal with some of those different things with dogs that maybe get hot really quickly, or how to keep them hydrated, and what kind of pests and stuff like that we need to look out for.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You are interested in competitive mountain biking. Before we start with the questions, what kind of mountain biking are we talking about? Like downhill mountain biking, or?
Yeah, we are. I actually raced motocross for a long time, and my segue into a slightly safer sport is competitive mountain biking, which has served to be great.
So a real quick little my one and only experience with downhill mountain biking. So I did not know how dangerous motocross is, but I thought downhill mountain biking was already kind of dangerous a little bit, at least for me as a newbie. I went to Beach Mountain in North Carolina during the summer or fall last year. And my dad, he's all about getting into flow, right? That whole topic about flow and like how people do like surfing or mountain biking. Like, so anyways, there's this guy's named Steven Kotler. He is the guy who knows the most about flow and how to get into it. And his favorite hobby is downhill mountain biking. And so my dad, he was like, wow, downhill mountain biking. He buys these bikes. We go up to North Carolina. I pull up to Beach Mountain. I see these little specks on the mountain going like ripping, like going so fast. And I was like, they're going kind of fast, Dad. and my dad, and then we start to see like some of the people doing like ramp jumps, freaking going downhill. They got like whole body armor. Just to give like our listeners and viewers a picture, if you've never seen downhill mountain biking, it's like basically the people who, it's similar to the Red Bull competition where that's obviously an extreme trail where they're going down a freaking
rampage. Yeah.
Yeah. So why downhill mountain biking?
I actually picked it up. Let's see, when I started undergraduate, and just regular plain old mountain biking. And then once I started going to Austin more, I started racing with a team that held races all over the country at lift assisted bike parks and non-lift assisted bike parks. So it's specifically called enduro racing. So you typically have several stages that you can run, but it's too much fun, good people, good times. It always takes you to beautiful places. So
that's definitely true.
Highly recommended.
I see it. I see that part. I think it was just the fact that what happened is my first and only experience is I was on the as beginner trail as possible that Beach Mountain had to offer. And it was still pretty sketchy. And then it started to rain and it was like slick and muddy. I was I'm walking the whole trail.
Oh no. Hey, at least it's downhill.
Yeah. Oh man, but wow, that's really cool. So let's start with the first question. So tell me and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself. Let's say you're 10 years old right now. What is Dr. Kingsley like at 10 years old? What is she interested in? What is her life like? And how does that get into veterinary school?
Well, Dr. Kingsley at 10 years old was Dr. Kingsley now, minus a few extra letters at the end of her name. Very much into animals and horses specifically. Grew up on some property outside of Houston. Honestly, at that point in time, I didn't know I wanted to be a veterinarian, but everything was kind of leading up to the point I knew I wanted to work with animals. Knew I wanted to be outdoors, and the medical field, I didn't know at the time, but solving puzzles, that kind of thing, it all just really fit and turned into a really amazing profession.
That's cool. That's cool. So, and you said when you graduated, when we were talking off air, that I'm not sure how you met BetterVet, but your guys' goals aligned at some point. The whole idea with BetterVet. Well, first, I guess, why don't you talk a little bit about BetterVet and what they have to offer for our listeners who don't know who they are, because I think, this is a new rising trend and what's going on. And then tell us how you guys came together to where your goals aligned, and that's how it came about.
Yeah, so I started my house call practice in 2016. It kind of just, if you would have asked me 5 years before then, hey, where are you going to be? I would have never said, I'm going to buy a mobile hospital on wheels and drive around the city of Austin taking care of animals. It's not exactly where I saw it, but I'm really glad that's where things kind of took me. So house call medicine is up and coming. The pandemic really blew the lid off of everything, and it's the gold standard for preventative healthcare for both pets and people. And BetterVet realized that. They saw that there was an opportunity, and there's an opportunity to do it well and to do it better. So I was approached by BetterVet in 2021, which is where they kind of got the ball rolling, and their model and their mission, everything really just aligned with what I saw my practice growing into, with just a little bit more backing to grow the team. So it's an incredibly tech forward process. Everything is app based, and just really focused on convenience to the clients and the lowest stress visit possible for the patient. So it was a no-brainer when we merged with them about this time last year, and it's been really great so far.
Cool. So BetterVet, basically you were doing house calls, and BetterVet is this company that partners with vets like yourself across the country that provide mobile veterinary care, pretty much as far as it's very basic to all the way to more intense, like surgeries, right? They provide that kind of care basically from what would you say is the beginning as far as what kind of care they provide all the way up to as far as BetterVet?
Yeah, so BetterVet is unique in the sense that they're full service. So old mom and pop house call services, it was mostly vaccines, wellness. Anytime you actually had a problem, that's where the road ended, and you had to be referred to brick and mortar or an emergency clinic. And with BetterVet, we have two models. We have areas where we have mobile hospitals like in Austin, and then we have areas where we partner with local brick and mortars to be able to provide surgical services and, more urgent care, take x-rays, that sort of thing. So we are in 20 cities nationwide, and I know that's constantly growing. The team's growing rapidly. So if we're not in an area, we probably will be there soon. So I'd encourage anybody who has not explored having a house call visit for their pet for one reason or another, give it a try and see how it works out.
Yeah, it's something I noticed you guys have some veterinarians in South Florida. So
Mm-hmm.
I will
Yeah, we
be
do.
I will be definitely taking my dog or having my dog sign up with BetterVet.
Yeah. If you, Dr. Palmieri and Dr. Steve Teich are good friends of mine, they'll take great care of you. And we have Dr. Bellows too, who's um, like a rock star in veterinary dentistry. So they've
Oh
got a
wow.
great team in South Florida.
Great. Well, my girlfriend, her dog is a little old. I'm not sure if he needs his teeth pulled at any point, but I'll definitely refer him if that time comes.
Yes.
So where do you currently practice? I know you're in Texas. Where exactly are you currently practicing?
Yeah, so I'm in Austin proper,
Mhm.
which really makes this podcast perfect. I don't claim to be an expert on anything, but we deal with a lot of summertime issues, and
Mhm.
it's been a really brutal early summer already this year. So, and having grown up in Houston, it's something we've had to manage. I've had to manage both as a veterinarian, not as a veterinarian. So,
Got it. Okay. Yeah, perfect segue. So because I'm also a perfect candidate for this, considering South Florida is unforgiving during the
yes.
summer. It's like what 110 degrees heat index right now.
Mm-hmm.
So so you said you deal with a lot of summertime problems. What are the most common questions, at least in Austin, and around that area? What are the most common questions you get about summertime, or what common problems do you see?
So the big ones is, I mean, and that question goes out the window pretty quickly in Texas because it just gets so miserably hot. But
Mm-hmm.
how hot is too hot? How at what point can I not leave my dog in the car? At what point can I not take my dog on a walk?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's some different unique things like you mentioned pests and snakes start to come out of the woodwork. So those are all big ones that I think we can hit on specifically.
Awesome. Well, I noticed you said how hot, or what you said, when is too hot to take my dog outside? That's something I actually wanted to ask you, more of a selfish question. I noticed, so my dog is a mixed breed. Um, she's about 2 years old, but she's mostly black with like little white paws
Mm-hmm.
and like a little speckled chest. She looks almost like German short hair, but it's like she's like a smaller version of one.
Oh,
Um, so I realized that like during the middle of the day, I can really only take her out for like 20 or 30 minutes. Um, what should I do if it's like say I want to go to the beach, or say I want to take her outside and I'm not able to bring her inside into AC? What should I prepare, or like what should I make sure to have to prevent her from overheating on our walks or just being outside?
yeah. So um, it really varies by breed. So I get
Mhm.
the question all the time, how hot is too hot? How long can I stay outside? There's no one set answer because it does vary. I mean, what is the coat consistency? Are
Mhm.
we a brachycephalic breed or the little
Mhm.
snub nosed guys? Are we a sporting breed dog? Are we, a herding breed dog? That sort of thing. But in general, I just circle it back around to, um, how are we tolerating it? And
Mhm.
then kind of reading the body language of your dog.
Mhm.
So things you can do to try and prevent it. If you're going to a place where you're just going to go hang out, bring a cooler and throw some small towels, some bandanas in the cooler.
Mhm.
Make sure she's plenty well hydrated before and during the
Mhm.
visit. So make sure you have plenty of fresh water source available for her if she needs it. Um, ice cubes are super helpful. Packing ice packs as well. So if it seems like she's getting a little too warm, you can place that around her chest, kind of up in her armpits if she'll tolerate it. That can
Mhm.
help bring her body temperature down. There's some different commercial cooling vests. I know Roughwear makes a couple really good ones
Mhm.
to have on hand. Those are particularly nifty for our black dogs to try and kind of deflect some of the heat from
Mhm.
just their coat color.
Yeah.
So those are some things just to have handy, ready, prepared if you start to notice your dog seems to be overheating.
Okay. And So I think, I mean, I've noticed there's been times it hasn't happened often because now I'm very aware of it. But we just had our road blacktopped. So not a good combination. He's
No.
black, the ground's black. So I have to, fortunately the sidewalk is white. So the heat, it doesn't absorb as much heat. But what would I do as far as preventing her paws from burning? When we're on our walks, or if I'm like crossing the street, what would I do? Is it really super important? Like, I mean, it is a short distance, but maybe if you're doing like a longer distance where the road's hot, what would I do to prevent her paws from burning?
Yeah, so this is probably the number one thing that we see during the summertime. And a lot of people don't even recognize that that's what's going on with their dog. So a common call I'll get is, oh my God, my dog woke up and it looks like she's walking on eggshells. And then you pick up their feet and they're just blistered raw. And, if dogs are having a good time, they'll push through pretty much anything. If there's a tennis ball involved, it's like, I didn't get the memo. That pavement's hot. I'm going to keep jamming. So, there's a couple of things you can do. One is test it yourself. So put your hand, either your barefoot or your hand down on the ground. If you can comfortably keep your hand there for 15 to 20 seconds, and that's comfortable being the key word there, then she's probably okay to walk without any kind of protection. If you guys have to go for a walk, or if you're going out on a trail that's mixed, even dirt in the height of the summer, it's not just exclusively blacktop. Dirt, rocks, pavement that's not blacktop can all get equally hot and cause some damage. So there's some really awesome protective booties for dogs. Again, I don't work for Roughwear, but Roughwear has some really awesome gear, especially for summertime stuff. So making sure if you're going out on a trail and you're not sure how long you're going to be out, if it's going to get too hot, throwing those booties on, making sure that you keep them clean. Dogs do sweat through their paws, so if you leave the boots on for too long and you don't clean them, they're going to get pretty funky. So making sure you're not leaving them on too long, let their paws breathe. Couple other things, obviously, early morning, late at night, a lot of things something that a lot of owners aren't aware of is that they're like, okay, cool, the sun goes down, it feels good to me, I'm going to put my shoes on and we're going to go for a walk because it feels better. Well, blacktop retains heat really, really well. So if you're going to take your dog for a walk in the evening, make sure you're repeating that test with your hand, making sure it's comfortable, or just waiting till the sun's been down for a couple of hours before you go out. So
that makes total sense. So you said that dogs will push through it. I know that some won't. My dog has actually one time, and I got the memo pretty quickly that it was too hot. She was kind of doing a little gimp. Aside from maybe that, what are some signs to look out for as far as that their paws are being burned or they're actually feeling the pain? And maybe there's some subtle ones. Maybe if the dog's having a good time, to where, like you said, they'll push through it, but maybe there's a sign that they are still in pain.
Yeah. So limping, obviously that's a big one, or doing like the little happy feet dance, just kind of cat on a tin roof, mental image. But, making sure if you're unsure if it's too hot, sidebar, take a break, pick up the tennis ball, hit the shade. Shady areas, even when it's hot, are infinitely more comfortable for dogs that don't have protection on their feet. Or take them, if there's a water source, an area where they can go swim, go let them cruise around. Usually if they are kind of redirected, if their energy is redirected and they're not like hyper focused on whatever they were doing, it'll give them a time to kind of reset and say, oh, you know what, my feet are a little bit sore, so I'm gonna dial it back. Or you might notice a little bit more clearly that they're a little bit short strided and they need to go in for the day.
Got it. Okay. And then you also mentioned leaving the dogs in the car. That's been a hugely controversial topic. Just doing it. I think a lot of people do it and they just kind of, they park in the back of the parking lot. They don't want, because they don't want to catch any, So what are your thoughts? Is it, I know, I'm going to asking this very basic question. People are gonna be like, of course it's not safe. Don't do it at all. Is it super dangerous? And is there a time to do it, or should just be completely avoided whatsoever?
Well, I mean, to take the controversy out of it, I mean, just breaking it down and looking at numbers, right? So, a car, no matter, if it's parked in the sun on a beautiful 70-degree day, that car can increase 30 degrees, the internal temperature, if all the windows are rolled up, and there's no sunshade or anything, in 30 minutes. So right there on a beautiful 70-degree day, that seems perfect for us. Your pet's now in a 100-degree car, which is not comfortable. It's also a little bit stagnant. There's no air circulation. And same thing, as the longer they stay, a car will the glass will trap infrared rays and it can't escape back out. So it literally becomes an oven, even on a nice day. Wow. So, there's some argument now. A lot of cars have remote start. Tesla has rover mode. That might be the only caveat to keeping your pet in a safe vehicle, but some remote start. So even if you walk away, your car's locked, the AC's running. A lot of time there's a time limit on that, and people can lose track of time. Your car shuts off, and boom, we start that clock of that temperature really quickly increasing. So I don't think there's really ever a good time to do it. Just even, heat aside, they're just better off either staying home or coming with you.
Got it. Okay. Good information. And you did touch on a general overview of some of the tools that you advise pet owners to have for beating the heat. I know you said towels and bandanas in the cooler. Now, are these towels are they dry towels? Are they wet towels? Or are they just like towels that just are in cool air, so they're cool? How does that work?
Yeah, so wet towels, wet, cool towels, if your dog will tolerate it. I mean, it's kind of the same thing for us, like dunking your head in cooler, throwing a cool towel or cold bandana around your neck. Definitely helps. If your dog is a fashionista, likes t-shirts, you can even, throw their t-shirt, kind of get it in the cool water, or just run it under some water to help kind of pull some of that heat away.
Okay. Well, now let's talk about some of the common pests and animals to watch out for during the summer. For us in South Florida, mosquito season is well underway. I mean, it honestly is, it's kind of year round. It's just obviously more so in the summer. At least I notice. But I feel it. I definitely get attacked more by mosquitoes during the summer. So, how far ahead should pet owners plan for things like fleas and ticks and mosquitoes? Because it also seems like fleas and ticks during the summer ramp up as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I feel like we're on the same page. This is an interesting conversation, especially working with BetterVet. We now have a nationwide connection of doctors, and all of this is very regionally dependent. So, so it's cool. We'll kind of speak the same language. So in our areas, like in Central Texas, South Florida, anywhere in the South, mosquitoes are year round. It's a tropical climate. They don't get the memo. They're here to stay. So heartworm disease is a big one that needs to be that mosquitoes can transmit, that dogs need to be protected from. Little and fat cats are also susceptible to heartworm disease. So I know it's mostly dogs, but got to plug in for the cats out there. And then as far as pests, I mean, fleas, we can see those guys, again, the numbers change a little bit but I've seen fleas in December in Texas. So,
Mm.
and same thing with ticks. We've got a lot of wildlife in Central Texas, so that certainly keeps the population there. So, um, fleas and ticks, we oftentimes don't even see them. A lot of owners don't even notice that they have them. The number of pets that come in and, I say, oh, we've never seen a flea ever. And then you know where to look, or to look for the evidence, and bam, they're there. So,
Mm-hmm.
so in southern areas, I'd recommend keeping your pet on prevention, both for heartworms and ticks and fleas year round. I personally like the oral preventatives, just because once it's in, it's in. You don't have to worry with some of the topicals. If you have a dog that really likes to swim,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the absorption can be affected by how often they're swimming, that kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
in areas like our headquarters is in Boston, they certainly don't have to treat for, fleas and ticks year round. And heartworm disease really isn't much of an issue. So if you have any doubt, just consult your veterinarian. That's in, or whoever you're seeing regionally. And then if in doubt, just keep them on it year round. All the preventives are really, really safe for the
Okay.
vast majority of dogs.
That was going to be my next question, just because I'm sure, just like you and some of our other readers, some of our other listeners and viewers, is we go on Amazon whenever we have like an emergency with mosquito or with ticks or fleas or anything like that. I personally have not had a flea or tick issue yet, but I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole as far as fleas and ticks, because we, put out content for dog owners who struggle with fleas and ticks. And I noticed that a lot of people have pretty negative things to say about some of the oral and on the skin treatments that are available over the counter through Amazon. So that was going to be my next question. You said they're generally safe, and is it fine to also really not have them on treatment year round? And like, what, you can just kind of do it during the big seasons like summer and I guess spring and summer kind of, and then just like have some maybe in your cupboard, just in case anything happens, or is it better to just have them take it year round? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, in South Florida, it's actually kind of interesting. You said you didn't have a problem with fleas and ticks. When I was there visiting the BetterVet doctors there, they made a really interesting point. Everybody keeps up with their lawns so well, and there's so many pesticides that are used from just a landscape purpose that they really don't see them. Which in Texas, everybody kind of lets their yards go a little bit more feral, I guess, and we don't use quite as much. So, but as far as so we really have two camps, and there's some products that have everything all in one. So heartworm prevention, if you're in a tropical climate, there's no reason to not have them on year round. Heartworm disease is it's pretty devastating if they do pick it up, and it is super preventable. If you do just a heartworm prevention, it's relatively cheap, couple bucks a month. If you're in an area like South Florida, or you're in an area where it gets really, really cold and you don't have to worry about fleas and ticks, then in the warmer months, having that flea and tick prevention on standby. But areas in Texas where we recommend having it year round. And I do agree. There's some over the counter products that are great. And they do their job well with some different restrictions, but the prescription-based medications, if you're going in and having a frank discussion with your veterinarian, they'll get you guys set up with the best medication that fits for your pet. Just like anything else, it's not one size fits all, and there's a lot of different products that you can get, and some work better for some breeds than others. So,
good information. That answered my question, just because I'm not sure what your perspective is, but I feed my dog homemade dog food. So I definitely am trying to keep, and I'm kind of the same way, is like, if I can avoid antibiotics, if I can avoid kind of taking medication, I will. Obviously, I'm not going to be an idiot or be not think it through if it's really a big deal and I need some antibiotics or some help or something like that. So I kind of had the same mindset for my dog, and that's why maybe there was some hesitancy. But you're saying that prescription medications are pretty much actually extremely safe, and more safe than over the counter.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say I think they do their job better than over the counter, but to put it in perspective, and I completely understand that, and I get that a lot from clients saying like, hey, why do I have to give my dog all of this? I don't really understand the benefit when I really don't see fleas and ticks. But ticks are pretty nasty, and they do transmit some pretty awful diseases.
Like
Lyme disease,
yep.
Rocky Mountain spotted fever. It's interesting, we've never really had Lyme on our radar in Austin, Texas, but in the last 3 years, we've had several patients come up positive. So as the climate changes a little bit, we are seeing kind of a different distribution with some of the ticks that can transmit Lyme disease. So Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Ehrlichia, anaplasma. I mean, a lot of these are conditions that are manageable, but there's something that your pet will probably have for their entire life and can have flare-ups and can be kind of difficult to manage. I mean,
so you just want to make sure you prevent getting it.
Exactly. So weighing the pros and cons, fleas are more of a nuisance. I mean, dogs can certainly pick up things like tapeworms. In cats, we can see cat scratch fever be more of an issue. But at the end of the day, kind of weighing the pros and cons of giving your pet a safe medication versus them possibly coming into contact with something that could give them a disease that they'll have to carry for the rest of their lives and manage. So, with everything, you kind of have to weigh the plus and minus, and that's how I justify it.
Yeah, it's similar to what I guess basically the best analogy is similar to health insurance. Is you complain paying for it when you don't need it, but then when you need it, you're glad you got it.
Exactly. And what's the saying? An ounce of prevention is a pound worth a pound of cure. So same mindset. We there's a method to the madness and a reason why we recommend. Now, if we're talking about a little 5-pound Yorkie poo that lives in a high rise in New York City, probably not going to recommend keeping that little guy on prevention all year round. So, all of that being said, we certainly take into consideration the lifestyle of the pet, their risk of exposure, the region, that kind of thing.
That's you mentioned something that's a perfect segue into my next question. Because you said it depends on the lifestyle of the dog. I was going to say, I mean, so yeah, I guess it depends on, would you say that you would recommend year round, even if they live in like the suburbs kind of, or like you said, a high rise where that's kind of the city? And then, as far as outdoor dogs and what you would recommend between the two.
Yeah, so definitely, again, if it's an area where mosquitoes are prevalent, heartworm disease is prevalent, even little fluffy poo up in the high rise should be on some level of heartworm prevention, because mosquitoes they're everywhere. And even, going out, strolling on the sidewalk, it just takes one bite to be infected with the little baby worms that can eventually make their way to the heart and cause big issues. But again, fleas and ticks, maybe not so much. So at the end of the day, I mean, there's a million different scenarios. If we've got dogs that are out hunting, spending a lot of time out in the wilderness, tick prevention all day long, all day, every day, all year round. It kind of seems like one of those things, like your vet just says, oh yeah, tick-borne diseases, but we really do see it. We see it come through the clinic pretty frequently. And it's kind of a bummer to have to treat these guys for their lives when, they could have just had a tablet every 30 days.
Got it. Okay. And then my next question, is this kind of also the same for snakes? Is that something you see more during the summer, or is that not
Ooh,
necessarily?
this is one of my favorite topics. So in Austin, we're kind of like the snake hotspot. We've got, you name it, we've got it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, again, the South is really just kind of the highlight of this whole summertime risk. I'm not picking on the South, but so snake bites are, in general, I mean, they're pretty devastating, depending on what snake is the culprit. But at the end of the day, about 80% of dogs will make it through a snake bite if they receive the proper emergency care. And that timeline is really dependent on how quickly they get into a veterinarian. So summertime, we definitely start seeing, actually even into the spring, we'll start seeing more snake bites pop up. I think the first snake bite I was aware of in Texas this year was in March. So it can start a little earlier in the year. But there's different things to try and prevent your dog from being bit. One is making sure you've snake proof your yard. So getting rid of any, piles of lumber or rocks, keep your lawn mowed. That'll also help with fleas as well, and ticks. There is a vaccine that is quite controversial, and that could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But if you poll 20 different veterinarians, you'll probably get 20 different answers on how they feel about it. And the jury's still out as to how effective it actually is. And at the end of the day, whether or not your dog has ever had a rattlesnake vaccine, if you know or even think that they've been bit, they still need to go in and seek immediate medical care.
So do they address the rattlesnake bite with the vaccine, or is that more of a preventative, depending on where you live?
Yeah, so we have two different things. We have the rattlesnake vaccine, which is the preventative, but again, still a lot of controversy circling around how actually effective it is. If you can imagine, clinical trials and studies on how effective it is wouldn't exactly be ethical. We certainly don't want to put dogs through that to see how well it works. So we really just kind of have to,
getting funding for that one's going to be kind of hard.
PETA might have a few qualms with it, but so we're really just left kind of collecting the data we have as veterinarians anecdotally. And so that's our vaccine, and that vaccine actually is preventative for crotallid snakes, so rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, most of the big bad dudes that can actually bite and make a problem. And then we have antivenin, which is what we give in the event of a bite. So same thing for people. It used to be super, super expensive. Making, if you had to take your dog in for a snake bite, it was a pretty big bill. The cost has come down a ton, and it's become way more available to clinics. So I think that's part of the reason why we're kind of circling back on the vaccine as well, is antivenin used to only really be in emergency clinics, and it could be difficult to find. And if your dog's bit, every minute is critical. So now that it's been more available, and the cost has come down quite a bit, it's really been a big game changer in cases like this. Got it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, that was very helpful for me. So let's first talk about, I think the first thing that comes with spring and summer is more rainstorms, thunderstorms. So let's talk about, we're going to be talking more about loud noises, and then we're going to eventually finish up with July 4th. But let's talk about thunderstorms. How often are people calling you for dogs who are afraid of loud noises like thunderstorms with the summer? And what do you typically recommend that is you've seen, not just the gimmicks that I'm sure there's plenty of products out there that are kind of, they claim, but what have you seen to really help dogs with that are super afraid of like loud noises like thunderstorms and fireworks and with July 4th?
Yeah, so that's super duper common. I'd say I saw a statistic. I think it's a little over a third of dogs suffer from anxiety from either noises. Thunderstorms is pretty interesting. I would put thunderstorms in its own category. There was recently a study done out of Tufts that indicates that part of the reason thunderstorms are such a trigger for dogs, it's not so much the sound, which is kind of the more intuitive thing you would think, but it's actually the static electricity that can be generated. So, and a lot of people, their dog knows a thunderstorm's coming, 20 minutes before the first clap of thunder. They're hiding, they're shaking. So, in those instances, it's really crucial, if your dog's prescribed a medication, or if you have, over-the-counter remedies that you feel work, or if you have thunder shirts, that sort of thing, even keeping an eye, if your dog's really, really triggered by thunderstorms, keeping an eye on the forecast. And as silly as it sounds, if it's bright and sunny when you're leaving for work, but there's a 50% chance of a thunderstorm, around lunchtime, go ahead, put the thunder shirt on, give a calming chew. If you've gone so far as to consult with a veterinarian, give them their anti-anxiety medications, because it's a lot harder to rein anxiety in versus preventing it from ramping up in the first place in dogs. So same thing, with fireworks. Fireworks, I think, is less of the static electricity. So, thunder shirts may not be as beneficial. But if it's the 4th of July, get those meds on board, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, not once you hear, oh, there's a bottle rocket, I'm going to go get that going. So, so really trying to get ahead of the curve. Another interesting one I'm circling back to thunderstorms. I actually think Martha Stewart was plugging it, but with the static electricity, there's been some claims that using dryer sheets, unscented dryer sheets, and kind of wiping your dog down to get rid of some of the static electricity would help. And Marty Becker, who is like the fear-free god in veterinary medicine, Dr. Becker, actually did a little bit of research around it and said, hey, there's actually some weight in this. So I wouldn't recommend, every single day wiping your dog down in dryer sheets. But, if you've got a big fluffy Australian Shepherd or something like that, it might be worth giving it a try and seeing if it helps.
Got it. So I did not know that. That's interesting that thunder shirts would be used specific. I mean, now I just thought they were a clever name. And I guess, that's kind of ridiculous that I wouldn't think that thunder shirts wasn't for thunder and only for thunder, I guess. But that's interesting. What I was going to say is that thunder shirts are not as effective for fireworks.
So when thunder shirts were initially designed, it was more along the lines of essentially your dog getting a hug or feeling embraced. Children with autism, it's shown like if they're just in an embrace, it brings down their anxiety quite a bit. So it just so happens secondarily, it also helps with some of the static electricity that is in their coat. So
got it.
Yes.
So that's my impression of what a thunder shirt did was exactly what you said. It's kind of like a hug, similar to like a weighted blanket
exactly
kind of deal for humans. So
yep.
I figured, anxiety or, I didn't know specifically thunder shirts worked better for the static electricity, but that's really cool. As far as the fireworks, you said get those medications on board. If people are a little more hesitant on medications, what would you recommend that they use as far as calming chews? Because I know there's a bunch of different concoctions of calming chews. Which ones have you seen or heard from friends? Maybe you've tested yourself that you found to be just as effective and maybe more affordable and better for that specific scenario.
Yeah. So, the calming chews, hit and miss. I would say more often than not, owners say, yeah, it didn't really do anything. But every now and again, I'll have somebody come back and say, man, that was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, they're cheap, they're safe. It's a supplement more so than a medication. But things like things that have melatonin based, some of the CBD treats, I know that's a big hubbub there, but I don't use them myself, but just from what clients have come back and reported to me, there are some CBD treats that are beneficial, most of which are usually found at the local CBD shop. I know EleVet, ELLEVET.
Yep.
They have some different products that are kind of structured more around anxiety. So those are all kind of over the counter things. I know VetraScience has a few good chews.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, it's certainly not something I would hold a ton of weight in, but it's certainly not going to hurt. So if you think your dog or know your dog has or is developing thunderstorm anxiety, certainly worth a try.
Got it. Okay. So let's ask a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. So the next one is interesting, and my question has to do with water. Because I know summertime is a great time to put dogs in the pool, let them splash around. If you have a lake nearby, maybe so they can cool off. I know our other co-host, Samantha, she lives in Maine. She just moved somewhere to where it's a lake in her backyard, and she lets her dogs swim out there all the time. So my question is, can dogs get sick from both pool water and specifically freshwater or lake water? Is that possible?
Yeah, it sure is, which this one owners really have to be smart about, especially if they're in warmer climate. So it's a no-brainer that if you can get your dog to swim, they're going to tolerate the heat a lot better. For example, I have a Swedish Valhound who's a Northern European herding dog. He's not really built for the heat. My brother's dog, which is his distant cousin, is the same breed. We take him out, and my brother's dog is part otter. I mean, he's swimming the entire time. He's having a great time. My dog, he just likes to get his feet wet, and he's always the one that hits the wall, starts panting profusely first. So I'm a huge proponent of getting your dogs out swimming. However, there's a couple of things that needs to be noted and taken with precaution. So the big thing in Austin and in southern areas when it's really hot, we have more stagnant water that's not flowing, is blue-green algae, which actually isn't really an algae at all. It's a bacteria known as cyanobacterium that grows, and the cyanobacterium in and of itself is microscopic. So you may or you may not see really anything with the water, but if there's a lot of it, it'll aggregate and it'll create kind of this nasty foamy sludge stuff on the top of the water that has kind of a noxious odor to it. It kind of smells like rotten eggs if there's a lot of it. But that being said, you may not see anything. So, this is a pretty nasty little bug that can cause liver failure. It can cause some changes with the nervous system, and if not treated appropriately, it can be fatal. So most counties that have an area, so I live in Travis County. On the Travis County website, if you Google, blue-green algae at Travis County, the county will actually go out and measure the levels of possible cyanobacterium particles and say, definitely keep your dog out, or, it's totally fine. That being said, if you are near a creek or a river, and you're not living somewhere where there's a terrible drought like I am, moving water is definitely safer than more stagnant areas. So, so that's really the big one with dogs ingesting water. If you have your dog out at the beach, if they're ingesting a lot of salt water, that can cause some GI issues.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I live literally like 5 minutes from the beach. I've never, we have a dog beach, so I've never really heard anyone say anything about their dog swallowing too much salt water, just because, I don't know, maybe that's just something that doesn't happen as often, maybe because the dog, if the person's throwing like a ball on the beach, the dog wants to bring the ball back, so they're not like out there swimming lots of, like, a good amount of time like they would maybe with like a safety vest, or if you're parked your boat somewhere or something like that. Got it. Okay. I did not know that they could get sick from that. Is blue algae it sounds like pretty nasty. It sounds pretty also harmful to humans, correct?
Yeah, definitely can be. And it's transmitted by ingestion. So if you've got, your big derpy lab that just lives to, catch tennis ball in the water, and they're kind of ingesting the water itself. The other means of transmission is if you have a big fluffy dog that just goes out and wades, gets it on their coat, and then turns around and is licking their coat. That's another possibility of how they can pick it up.
And is blue algae, I think you did already say this, but I might have missed it in passing, but blue algae blooms more so in the summer. So that's why it's a bigger risk during the summertime. That's why this part of what we're talking about is relevant, is it actually happens more in stagnant, non-moving water during the summer.
Yes, in areas where there's a lot of intense light. So, the closer you are to the equator, the longer the days are. That's a lot more favorable environment for this stuff to grow.
Got it. And you did say something that you recommend dogs. You do recommend that owners teach their dog how to swim. Do you have any experience as far as how to train dogs, like how one would? Because I am a swimmer. I had a background in swimming, so I wanted my dog to be able to swim because I like going to the beach and I like, taking a dip. So I wanted her to learn, and she absolutely hates the water, and I think that's my fault. And so is it possible to get her to enjoy the water, and how would I do that?
Yeah. I mean, every dog's different. I actually had the same issue with my dog, and one of my good friends is a behaviorist, and she owns Wife's Tales Academy in Austin. And I was like, man, what do I do? Like, did I just miss the boat here? Did I do something wrong? I said, nope, just stay consistent. They've got to feel it out for themselves, work within their comfort zone. I wouldn't ever recommend just throwing your dog into the deep end. They're gonna I mean,
terrible idea.
No, they'll probably figure out how to swim, and they probably will swim, but they're probably going to hate it. So be patient, use a lot of positive reinforcement, especially when it's really hot. Most dogs will get past some of their reservations about the water and be like, oh my God, this feels amazing. And, if they like to fetch, start really small with just fetching kind of into where the water is just touching the shore, and then slowly work your way out. And, they may get there, they may not, but most dogs really do come around.
So my next question is, because her technique is not the best. So the reason I gave up is because of how she would swim. I'm like, maybe she's not meant to swim. And are there dogs that are not meant to swim, and can you still get them to swim, and how would you do that? As if they can't really swim very well, do you need to monitor them and or at least be with them in the water while they're moving along? How does that work?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are dogs that just were not anatomically blessed to be Michael Phelps. One of my good friend's dogs had an English bulldog that this dog had to be made partially out of dark matter, but he would stink. And he was fine with, like, he was just the most chill dog. He really didn't get upset about much. And he lived on Lake Austin. And Biggs took the wrong step and he fell in the water, and he didn't even really try and fight or swim back up. He was just looking at us underwater. He had a couple little bubbles coming out, like, okay, this is cool. This is fine. And so everybody dove in and got him out, and he was completely fine. But that's the day we learned that Biggs didn't float and he didn't swim. So anytime he was outside, he had his life vest on. So, if you have a lab that's part otter, you probably don't need a life vest unless you're in, fast water, or if you're out on a boat, or they could possibly, jump out at high speed, hurt themselves. But if you have a dog that, one, is learning to swim or a little bit reserved about swimming, I would recommend getting a life vest on them. It helps certainly build confidence, once they finally get that courage to go, okay, my paws aren't touching the bottom anymore. They have a little bit extra buoyancy, so they don't have that panicky feeling.
Well, they like chop the water.
Yeah.
That's I tried to get her to, I was not the person that tossed my dog into the pool. I was the one that was trying to like wade her. I was like, kind of getting her to come in, and I would hold her. But man, I tried that one time at the beach, and I just got beat up. I had like scratches all over me. I felt stupid. So I definitely will be investing in a vest.
Yes.
Or a life vest, because that's a great idea. I didn't even think about that. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then lastly, some people like to let their dogs out and be more outdoor dogs, when if it's like a short hair and maybe winter's over, during the warmer months, and this can cause us to get careless, and in some terrible cases lose the dogs. How important is it in this case to have a microchip? Is that the best option to have? And is there any other products, if the dog is not microchipped, that you would recommend?
Yeah, this is it's actually funny you mention it. So June is Microchip Awareness Month. So go Microchips.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so microchips have been around for a bit now. They're very safe. They've been used for many generations of dogs. And it's one thing owners need to understand is, although microchips are, wonderful tools, they're not doggy LoJack. So if your dog takes off and is microchipped, he does need to be found, picked up, taken to either a vet clinic or an animal shelter for that chip to be scanned, then cross-reference through a database to find the information. So, which actually happens in a lot of cases. We've reunited lots of dogs with their owners because they were microchipped. One thing that does come up pretty frequently is, especially dogs that are microchipped in a shelter and then adopted, is owners will forget to register their microchips. And so once they're found, yes, register your microchip. Because sometimes we get lucky, we can trace a microchip back to where it was placed. And but really at the end of the day, just get it registered. It's there. So you always have the information. There's a lot of other products that are really cool. Now the Apple AirTag, which my cat darted out the door too many times, to now he has to wear his AirTag all the time. But the one benefit of a microchip over some of the GPS collars and AirTags tiles is that it can't fall off. It can't be removed. It's a permanent form of identification that is 100% unique to your pet. So if you have a dog, like a GSP or a lab that likes to go visit the neighbors without permission, I'd use a combination of both. And some of the like whistle collars and stuff, you can actually track where they're going, and see how active they are during the day. There's a lot of really cool features. So,
and let's say I got a dog, or I rescued a dog or adopted or whichever, bought from a breeder, and they were not microchipped. What would you say the typical cost is? I mean, I'm sure it changes per state, but like, is it relatively affordable to get your dog microchipped, or is it like a $200 or $300 hit?
yeah, no, it's super affordable. I'd say on average, probably $50. Some areas cheaper, some maybe a little more. And the beautiful thing is microchips have gotten so small, the applicators are so small, it's really not much more than your pet getting a vaccine. So it's something that, they don't have to be sedated for, they don't have to go under anesthesia. They can get it, as soon as they're getting their first boosters. So there's really, no reason not to.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Dr. Kingsley, this was an awesome conversation. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time today to help our listeners and our viewers. This was an awesome conversation. I learned a lot. I took some notes, actually. So why don't we talk a little bit about where people can find you, Dr. Kingsley, maybe on social media, or is it specifically on BetterVet? How can people support you? How can they find you?
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in looking at mountain bikes and Swedish Valhunds, my handle on Instagram is motodoc_46. And then of course we have BetterVet on Instagram, which is chock full of all kinds of really cool. On our story, we have Ask a Vet every week that goes over just some different hot topics. Also a lot of really cute photos. We all have a competition for photo of the week. So it's all of the field teams just submitting the cutest patient, cutest scenario, whatever. So, kind of get a feel of what a life as a house call vet is like. And then bettervet.com. If you're interested to see, if we're in the area or if we're coming soon, you can download the BetterVet app, which is super cool. You can input all your pet's information. If we are in your area, you can make appointments, see what availability is, see what doctors are available. So those are all really good avenues.
That's really cool. Good stuff. And tell me a little bit about that Ask a Vet thing that happens every week. Is that like a Q&A? Do you guys do like a live? How does that work?
It's not live. So we'll just kind of general feedback from clients. If we have a question that just keeps coming up, then we'll post that in the story and have a vet just give, a quick 30-second breakdown of what the question is and some different answers or different perspectives on it.
Got it. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. That's going to do it for us here at Top Dog Tips and also the Theory of Pets podcast. If you find this information awesome, if you learned something new, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, continue to follow our podcast so we can continue to put out great content for you all. And with that, I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.